Some secrets remain hidden because everyone agrees to keep them that way. Then there are secrets that remain unspoken because the wrong person hasn't spoken yet. Because what you're going to hear is not a nice tale. It's not little. In reality, Sarah Ferguson failed to refute this specific lie for years. She never dismissed it with a chuckle, never confronted it in public, and never hurried to put an end to it. And that type of quiet is never coincidental in royal life. A royal prince, a newly titled duchess, and a luxury boat were all engaged in the tale. After spending 3 days apart from the outside world, there was supposedly a consequence that may have altered everything. A pregnancy, a sudden end, and a future that was altered before it was made public. Sarah Ferguson was aware of Prince Andrew's routines. She was familiar with the settings he preferred, and having spent decades with ambition, she could spot it when she saw it. Fergie was thus not surprised when Meghan Markle became a member of the royal family years later. It was an old one that had been neatly sealed, purposefully forgotten, and never intended to come up again until now. Because the past doesn't remain hidden when the lady who kept the quiet quits doing so. It insists on being heard. And that's when the true tale starts. It matters when Sarah Ferguson quits defending someone. Fergie didn't require an explanation of boat culture. Long before Meghan Markle was involved, she had witnessed it firsthand. This is when Meghan and Andrew's narrative takes a turn for the worst. Many years later, Meghan would recount how she first met Prince Andrew, implying that she didn't recognize him and thought he was just a guy carrying the Queen's purse. It seemed innocent, lighthearted, and almost endearing to the general population that it seemed unfeasible to Fergie. Andrew wasn't mysterious. He wasn't undetectable. For someone who had studied the royal family, dated in high society, and then married straight into it, he wasn't a man you just didn't recognize. More significantly, Meghan was used to Andrew's surroundings. Fergie had an understanding that the general public lacked. Distancing language is frequently employed when history needs to be rewritten to suit a more tidy narrative, when familiarity needs to be erased, or when previous proximity becomes unpleasant. The tale of the valet did not imply innocence. It was a symbol of separation. Additionally, separation is typically necessary when anything existed prior to the start of the canonical timeline. The overlap between Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew was not hypothetical, according to information that arose covertly and was disclosed in secret. It was tangible. According to the story, they were together on a private yacht off the coast of Nice in February 2002. According to reports, Andrew was a VIP visitor. According to reports, Meghan was on board as a member of the social group. The ship was not packed. Anonymous faces and limitless decks were absent. Everyone was aware of each other's identities and motivations. Once Andrew arrived, there was a quick change of focus, according to an eyewitness who was only known by anonymity and spoke through a third party. Meghan was supposedly placed only next to him in a brief period of time. They were said to have retreated below deck shortly after. According to the account, what transpired was not a brief encounter, but rather many days of isolation, private meals, and obvious separation from the other members of the party. The dynamic had shifted by the time they appeared. It was noted by those on board. Talk ensued, and even as years went by and people's lives changed, the narrative remained with those who saw it. Fergie didn't find this revelation startling. It was affirmation of something that had long been known but never said out loud. Because some tales don't come to light when they occur. When those who have been protecting them cease to do so, they emerged in tales such as these. The interaction itself is not the most important thing. It's what follows. According to the story that was shared, Meghan and Prince Andrew continued to communicate after the boat landed. Follow-up correspondence, ongoing communication, and an assumption that something had been formed were all there, at least on one side. But Andrew went back to London and did what he is said to have done several times in the past. He pulled away. Meghan called, but no one picked up. There was no response to the messages. Staff members were eventually told to completely restrict contact. Doors closing, access closed. Whatever had occurred was now firmly in the past. This is not out of the ordinary at royal dynamics. Problems are erased by distance. However, the silence did not arrive silently. And this is where the narrative becomes more complex. The evidence stated that once Andrew returned to England, Meghan made many attempts to contact him. Not lightly, not once or twice, but consistently. She thought he should know something. The haste and the ensuing stillness may be explained by what that information was. Meghan is said to have thought she was pregnant. This would have altered everything if it were true, institutionally as well as personally. It would have been disastrous if Prince Andrew had an unmarried, uncontrollable child. Nevertheless, the calls were never answered. Andrew didn't participate. He remained silent. He completely cut off communication. That would have been an outright refusal for someone used to access. The story states that a choice was taken in the absence of a response and a way ahead. The pregnancy ended. Communication completely stopped after that. This part of the tale clarifies something that has always existed under the surface, whether it is real or not. Not just why communication ceased, but also why resentment could have ensued. Decades of quiet would be explained if this tale included even a little amount of truth. Prince Andrew would have every incentive to make sure this never came to light. The royal family would have every motivation to bury it entirely, and Meghan would have every reason to go on and change her future. There were no documents, no pictures, and no willing public witnesses. Just recollection. The purported witnesses were not insiders with authority or protection. Rather, they were young, passing through backpackers and visitors. And as time went on, Meghan's existence continued until she re-entered the royal world through a different door years later. At that point, history reappeared and closeness returned, making this past perilous once more. Strategic, not emotional, sacrifices are made as pressure rises inside powerful families. Meghan Markle occupies a position that is particularly vulnerable. Although she is connected to the royal tale, it does not shield her. She is not protected by generations of institutional protection. She is not immune by blood. Most importantly, she is no longer useful to those who had supported her existence inside the royal power structure, making her disposable. There is nothing to conceal about Prince William. He is in a stable position. His narrative is spotless. There isn't any leverage there. Conversely, King Charles is wary. He is aware of exposure. He is aware of how easily stories may fall apart. Even yet, he is aware of which fights to engage in and which parts to let go. Meghan takes on the role of pressure valve, the narrative that can be published without causing the system to collapse, the truth that can be compromised in order to safeguard larger structures. Sarah Ferguson is fully aware of this. Meghan's truth is the safest to share first if one must be revealed. There is no conflict of opposites here. It's a mirror collision. Meghan Markle and Sarah Ferguson have more in common than just being close to royalty. They have similar inclinations. Both are aware of status. They both comprehend access. They are both aware of how connections turn into money and how fast loyalty fades when it is no longer helpful. They don't operate sentimentally. They are tactical ones. Fergie played her part for years. She remained near. She said nothing. She kept up appearances. She was let to stay in exchange. Meghan took a similar course, rewriting stories as circumstances changed, eliminating connections below, and aligning herself upward. Individuals were helpful and valuable until they weren't. Timing makes a difference. Through survival, controversy, and loss, Fergie had to learn the rules the hard way. Meghan believed that the rules will always work to her advantage. And everything breaks down at that premise. Because the fallout between two individuals who have the same tendencies is destructive rather than emotional. Furthermore, Meghan didn't just abandon a former ally when she opted for distance over diplomacy. She turned on a witness. Sarah Ferguson's position becomes inevitable at this point. Fergie didn't require evidence. She didn't require sworn declarations or pictures. She was near enough to Andrew to be aware of his habits. She was aware of the settings he liked. She was also aware when stories were handled discreetly rather than tackled. Because she was aware of Meghan's aim, she also comprehended it. This is the reason this secret was kept a secret for so long. Silence held as long as it was advantageous to all. However, the equilibrium has changed. Meghan is no longer favored by the system, and Fergie is no longer protected by it. Additionally, Andrew has always depended on other people to bear the burden of his history. What happens if the one person who understands how all those parts go together decides to quit keeping the quiet? Secrets wait, not vanish. Furthermore, the past doesn't whisper when someone with memory, purpose, and nothing left to lose chooses to speak, even indirectly. It comes up again, and when it does, there are no more rumors, yachts, or denials in the tale. It turns into a question of who chose to remain silent and who knew. And the royal family has always been most afraid of that type of reality.